What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 11 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where two best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide, wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friend, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello.
Hello, Stephen. How you doing this week?
I'm all right, yeah. It's been a good week, I think. Tiring for you by the sounds of it, because you did not stop yawning before we started recording.
Don't break the seal. Now that we're on the show, you know, I'm already in I've
suppressing them.
Yeah. I've got to push it all down. You know, I'm in character
Next
already.
to the Coke.
I put on host mode. All right, it's Diet Coke. All right, don't make me out to be some kind of drug addict. I don't need that kind of press.
I think it would add an edge to the show. What if I was like the real edgy one? I don't think I could pull it off, really.
I don't know, because like, you know, in a universe where you're the edgy one and then I have to be the non-edgy one, that's like that's a new thing for me, you know?
Yeah. I don't think I could pull it off. My face doesn't let me pull that kind of shit.
You got a baby face, yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem.
But I don't know.
Man, I'm kind of happy because I don't look 28, and we're both 29 in 2 months.
Yeah, I'm gonna look like an old man soon. You know, I'm sure. Pretty soon
I will too when all my hair goes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm either gonna lose my hair, or I'm gonna start getting the grays in the beard. I think one way or the other. You know, like it's.
Oh, the grays in the beard are all right if it's a kept beard. It's when it's grays in the beard that are like, it makes it look like a dirty beard because it's just grown out.
Yeah,
and it's just like, no. So just trim it and you'll be fine.
It's just like, no. Anyway, this isn't One More Thing, our Patreon exclusive show. This is FlipScreen Games Podcast. So we're here to talk about video games. But before that, I got to do some housekeeping for you, like reminding you that this episode of the FlipScreen Games Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of October. They are, of course, Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valenz, a.k.a. That Doc Guy, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/FlipScreenGames. Y'all are the realest of the real and helping us keep these mics on, and we greatly, greatly appreciate your support over there. Of course, speaking of Patreon, that is the place where you can go for One More Thing, our Patreon exclusive podcast where we have conversations much like that intro where we just talk about nothing, basically. And it's a good time. This past week on One More Thing, we talked about my trip to New York Comic-Con. We talked about a little bit about conventions in general. We talked about me going to see John Mulaney in Philadelphia. What else did we talk about? A bunch of other stuff, too. It's a big one.
Oh, it's like a pick and mix, you know. We just chuck topics in there. We went off topic a million times. A lot of video game stuff. There was a lot of Game of the Year.
Oh, yeah, we talked about Game of the Year for some reason.
Yeah, but we'll get to it here. But yeah, there's a lot of Game of the Year chat. So if you want to know what our kind of ranking of Game of the Year is so far, is in One More Thing at the moment. It'll be on the main show probably next week. It's not our fault that Kotaku decided to blow the internet up this week.
Yeah, good for us, right? Gave us something to talk about. But yeah, if you want to go listen to that and every other episode of One More Thing, you can go support us over on Patreon at whatever level you can afford. But speaking of, if you hit us at the Blue Coin level, you'll be able to get access to the archives of our Twitch stream, which includes what Steve I almost just said what Steve twitched. Good God. What Steve streamed yesterday as of this recording, which was a little bit of Shenmue. So if you want to go catch that, that's another way you can show your support and get a little bit of extra content from us. But of course, if you don't have bucks to send our way, that's no big deal. There's a plenty of other ways you can support the show, like coming and checking out the Twitch streams live every Thursday night. Or now, I guess, Steve, with your brand new time, you've got them Wednesdays at what time?
6 p.m. UK time. It will always be 6 p.m. UK time. So depending on daylight savings time, it's around 1 p.m. Eastern and 7 p.m. in Europe. But 6 p.m. UK time, if you're unsure, just check. And it's also on our Twitch schedule, so you can go over there and have a look.
There you go.
But yeah, next week I'm going to stream some more Shenmue, or this week. So tune in on Wednesday if you want to see some more Shenmue. But a lot of people joined. A lot of people came and watched some Shenmue. It was crazy. That game is bizarre. We were busy looking for sailors. We still haven't found them.
I appreciate that we have a time slot now that works a little bit better for the European folks. So, yeah, if you've never been able to tune into one of our streams before, go check it out on Wednesday nights. We're still working on how to add more days to the calendar. So, keep your eyes peeled. We've got plenty to come over there on twitch.tv/FlipScreenGames. But of course, you can also head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website. We've got links to all the other places we are on the web, including Twitter, our Discord, which are a couple of ways that you can write into the show, as well as writing into us at questions@flipscreen.games to be a part of our question block segment or our main topics, which a bunch of people did this week. So thank you very much for writing in. If you've never written in before, I'm issuing the challenge now. If you're a longtime listener, but you've never heard your voice read on this show, like I know a lot of folks do, write in. I want to hear from you, right? Let's hear from you. Let's get your thoughts read on the air.
Put in the subject, long time listener, first time caller.
Long time, first time.
Yeah, make sure it's first here.
Fun fact, that is a thing that people often accidentally say instead of my band's name.
Long friend, first time.
Yeah, or long time, first time.
Long time, first time. Not long friend, time friend.
Oh boy. Anyway, let's jump into what we're playing this week. We already talked about a little bit about Shenmue, but is there anything else you want to share there? How are you getting on with it? Is this your first time playing?
No, this is like my 8th time playing.
Okay, I had no idea.
I know this game like the back of my hand at this point, but no, we had a great time on stream. Loads of people joined. It was great. Ray from the community joined me on mic because he loves the Dreamcast. I think he owns like 9 Sega Dreamcasts or something crazy. It's
Good
ridiculous.
God, Ray.
But yeah, we had a great time. We looked for information about Black Car. We looked for Chinese people. We looked for sailors. We haven't found any of those yet. So we've not done great. But we did get the Sega Saturn game from one of the Sega Saturn games from the Tomato convenience store. So we went and played some Hang On the Sega Saturn underneath the TV. And it's always struck me as so strange. The game's set in 1986, but they have a Sega Saturn. It's a bit strange that they didn't pick like a Mega Drive or something.
That is odd.
But whatever, it does the job. But yeah, it was great. It's like revisiting an old town that you've been to once before, and you just remember where everything is. So I'm looking forward to finishing this one. I think I'm going to finish it on stream.
Awesome. Very cool. I very much like the idea of us having more like long form series like that. We should maybe like do some kind of like edit so people can keep up with it, but maybe not watch like the whole VOD. We'll see.
Yeah, I definitely would like to. But in the meantime, everything's going up on the Twitch archive. So if you did want to watch past episodes, you can do if you just head over to Patreon.
So you've got another game that you want to talk about, but I want to save it for last because I feel like that's the main event for me in terms of my excitement of talking to you about what you played. So we both played more Metroid. Or played Metroid.
Well, I didn't because I finished it.
You finished it, but since the last show, you played Metroid Dread. You can go hear our full conversation about Dread over on Nintendo Noise this week. We had a friend of the show, Max Wright, on, who you may remember as one of our compatriots over at Loot Pots, and he's also associated with the Cross Players and everything. Max is like the Metroid guy. As long as I've known him, it's been his obsession, and he's been waiting for this game for like 10 years. He finally got it. He got to gush all about it on Nintendo Noise. It was a great conversation. So go check that out if you want to hear Steve and Chewy and Max's full thoughts about the game. But I, coming hot off of New York Comic Con, had the least amount of time to play the game of anybody. I was really only about an hour, maybe 2 hours into the game by the time we sat down. And
then we spoke a little on One More Thing, and I said, I don't think you played much more by the time we recorded that, but I said on One More Thing, I didn't think you were going to continue to love it as much as you were, and you were like, that's interesting because I really like the game, and you didn't really think that I would think that about you. So I am curious as to whether you're still hot on this game or whether you've cooled a little bit.
So I really like it. I really like it, and I had said I was surprised that you felt that way because I was super shocked to see that you fell in love with the game like you did, because I feel like we've always been on the same page about Metroidvania.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason,
I think the linearity helps, right? Because it always nudges you in the right direction. I don't know how Chewie got lost for we haven't disclosed this information, but he disclosed it in DM the next day after the recording. 3 hours he got lost.
That's
It
rough.
took him to get back to where he needed to be. I think I probably would have given up and looked at a guide, but Chewy's hardcore, so he just keeps persisting.
He is hardcore, man. He's a real gamer, real gamer. But yeah, I think the linear nature of it does help me a lot because I often feel like that's where I bounce off of a Metroidvania is I hit a point where I'm not sure where I'm supposed to go and I'm kind of just wandering aimlessly, and it makes it a thing that I don't, even if I'm not disliking the game, it makes it less of a priority for me to get back to it, if that makes sense, you know? Because I've had sessions with a Metroidvania where I'm like, man, I don't really feel like I accomplished that much because I spent so much time just being lost or confused.
Yeah.
Whereas with Dread, I've had, basically no period where that's happened because it's always been clear what were the parts of the map I hadn't seen yet. And also like, oh, well, okay, I can't go this way yet because I don't have like the morph ball ability, or like I, moved some water around. So now this is filled and I can't get back through here. So like the game funnels you in a really smart way. Like when I got to the part where it would take me to the second map, I was like, okay, I should go back though, because there's things I haven't found here yet. Right. Like now that I have new abilities, like I should probably go explore, but I was like, oh, no,
Did you not get stuck though because there was like a load of fire rooms and you...
Yep, exactly. So I was like, oh, so there's literally nowhere I can go. So I go to the next thing and I was like, okay, there's nowhere I can go here either, but there was nowhere for me to go there. So like I was like, okay, so maybe there's like a thing I need to like break, and I figured out that there was like a secret passage and stuff. And
yeah, I just stopped bombing and shooting things when I was stuck. It's annoying that it's a slight spoiler for you, I presume, but there's a scanner ability that shows you those hidden blocks later on in the game, and I kind of wish that they gave you that power up a little bit earlier in the game, because I think it would have helped in that situation, because I got lost in that situation as well. And you can actually get surprisingly far without the Varia suit. You can just run through places. There's like frozen sections as well. You can just run through them if you're quick enough, and I don't think you're meant to be able to. I guess that's part of the sequence breaking stuff that people have been trying.
Yeah, if you're extremely efficient, I guess you can get around those obstacles, unnaturally, but I'm not that good at the game, so
I was terrible at this game, like truly terrible at this game. How are you getting on with the bosses and stuff? Whereabouts are you in the game?
So I think I've done. Well, I was talking to my friend Mike about it, and I think I've done 2 bosses. But when they described the second boss that I did, they were saying that was like the first main boss. So I don't know. I fought the guy who can turn invisible. Like, that was the most recent boss that I faced off against.
I think that's the first boss.
Okay, so that's the first boss at the end of that section, I guess.
Yeah, the other one is an Emmy. Did you consider that like a...
No, I was thinking of, there's the computer. There's like the master computer that you fight, and there's like, it's got the gun that follows you, and then there's like projectiles coming from the side, and you have to shoot the thing, and then it pops and it's a brain, and that's how you get the second charge.
That's not a boss, yeah.
Okay.
No.
I was thinking that was like a mini boss.
Over and over again.
Okay, cool. Well, that's good to know. So I guess I've beaten one boss, and I got to the second map, and I'm, pretty deep into that map. But I haven't like beaten it yet. I've got like the, what powers did I get? The one where you can like climb the blue walls, and then the one where you can turn invisible. So I have both of those now. So
the magnet, and then the like phase shift or whatever it is to...
Well, no, phase shift is the teleport, right?
Oh, that's flash shift, yeah. I don't know what the other one's called. I think it's phase something.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, I have...
I don't know, but I love the flash... Have you got the flash shift then?
No.
Is that the first power-up you get? Okay, that's my favorite one in the game.
Yeah, no, I don't know when I'll get that, but I don't have it yet. So far, all I can do is turn invisible and climb walls, and then charge my gun up. I think that's all I got.
That opens up like a lot more things, all right? Just the being able to charge your gun up to open those charge doors, and then being able to latch onto any of the blue walls or the blue ceilings or things like that.
Yeah.
really opens up areas you can get to.
Yeah, and it's nice. And not only that, it's given me like, I feel like I have more tools now against the Emmys, so I feel like those sections are already feeling less frustrating to me because it's not just, okay, like I can run or I can run. Like now I at least have some options to play with, you know? And
You can now go invisible and hide. That's the only other real option, right? Other than running.
well, no, and
if
there's a magnetic wall, you can go up in a corner and like hide where they're not scanning and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's like run or hide. You're not going to
Yeah.
take it on. But yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, that's twice as many options as I had before.
Yeah, it was just run before, yeah. Yeah. So you can't go into a ball yet either.
No, I'm really, really looking forward to that because there are so many places I found where I'm like, clearly I need to be able to be a morph ball to go here.
Yeah, it's like clearly if you just got on your hands and knees, you'd be able to fit in there, Samus. Like, it's not that much of a challenge. You can crawl in every other game.
It's funny to me that she can literally just turn into a ball, but can't crouch in that armor.
Yeah, way too difficult. But she can literally turn into a ball when she's jumping as well. Like,
yeah.
she does the spin jump. We know she can get into that shape.
Yeah.
So she could do it. Just doesn't want to.
What the hell are her bones made out of? You ever wonder that? Like, it's insane.
Jelly.
Yeah, right? Like, she's got that Chozo DNA, and apparently all Chozos just had, like, liquor.
It's like that Metroid jelly amiibo, isn't it? That's what she's made out of. She's made out of that material.
It's got a squishy quality to their bones. They can, like, flatten themselves like cats. But yeah, I'm getting on with it really well. I'm having a good time with it. And I've felt the pull, you know? Like when I'm not playing, I'm thinking about playing, you know? So that's good. Not great for all the other games that I stopped playing to play it, but hey, that's okay.
Having on reflection, I think this is the number one contender for Game of the Year for me, and I really think it could be number one contender for a lot of people. I think this has a real chance at the Game Awards this year, which I never considered it would.
I think you're probably right. I mean, good chance. I don't know that it'll like clean house, but I think it'll definitely take home some big prizes. I'd have to imagine. So, I teased before that you had played a game I was very excited to chat with you about, and that, of course, is one of my Game of the Year candidates, Disco Elysium. So, finally came to Switch. You finally got your hands on it. How far in are you? How are you feeling?
Yeah.
How are you playing?
Okay, well, before we get on to the game, I want to talk about the port itself, because I want to make some comparisons with the PlayStation port that you've played. Because I've had a couple of people ask me on Twitter, and there are some performance issues with this game.
I'm not surprised by that.
Switch. It's a little bit laggy, moving around in places. But my number one gripe with it is probably the menus. Flicking to, I can't remember what it is, that one with the brain where you like visualize stuff and you like remember it and it like does the research shit and then you come back later.
I forget what it's like. It's perks basically, but I forget what they're called.
Yeah. Well, I've gone to like tab onto it multiple times and it's like, oh, it hasn't done it. So I'll press it again and then it skips over that tab and goes right back round to the beginning. And so it just takes a very long time to load. You just have to be really patient with it. And then these are all things that could probably fix with a patch, because I know it's a very new game to Switch. And then the other thing is the moving between areas. So coming out of the cafe to going outside, there's like a very lengthily loading period. I don't know what that was like on other platforms that you've played it on.
So, I mean, when I said I wasn't surprised that there were performance issues, that's why. Because I played it on PlayStation 5, which is obviously, you know, quite a bit more powerful than a Nintendo Switch. And the load times even on that were pretty long. And, like, load times on, like, big... Like, I remember the load times on, like, Horizon Zero Dawn, for example, were, like boom, we're done. It's loaded, you know? But it's like... But Disco was like, oh, okay, yeah. I got a minute to check Twitter here, you know? It was, like, one of those kinds of things. And that's one of the only games I've played on PlayStation 5 that has had that kind of amount of load time to it, you know? So I'm not surprised to hear that it's got some issues where it's kind of chugging in spots. But are you finding that that's seriously impacting the experience, or are they just kind of like
No,
minor
it's
annoyances?
just minor annoyances because it's very rare you go onto that. I think it's called like visualizations. Very rare you go onto that screen. It's only when you get something that you have to go and equip the perk. But at the moment anyway, it's very rare that I go onto that screen. It might change throughout the game. I don't know.
Not really. It's a thing you do once every couple hours, probably.
Yeah, so that's fine. I can live with that. And the loading between areas, again, if that's a problem on all platforms, then no, then that's just how the game plays, and that's fine. I can definitely live with that. I've had a great time just playing this in bed though. It's really nice to play handheld, and there's touchscreen support, so you can tap on items and things
cool.
like that. So rather than having to use the right stick and then selecting which one, I'm fairly sure I have been tapping. I'll have to double check, but touchscreen support seems to be there, which is nice. As for how I'm playing, I kind of did an even character with a focus on empathy. I wanted to be able to have like understand people and relationships and hopefully manipulate them in certain ways. And I'm playing just as if it was me. At the first round, I'm making choices as if these are the choices I would make.
Yeah.
I know when we played on stream before, I was playing as like Hobocop and I was making all the most ridiculous choices. I think that'd be my second playthrough, but I don't want to play like that my first time around. I don't want to be a dick to Sakuragi. I just want to be me. And I'm a dick to people that are a dick to me. Gott's had his fair share of... fair share of words from me, because he's just a knob, an absolute knob, and I presume he's a knob throughout the entire game. But like, there's no way you could really get away with talking to people like that and still have a job as a cafe manager. Like, no one's going to come to your cafe.
To be fair, I feel like he's being that way to you because you're a fucking horrible guest. Yeah.
Well, I called Sylvie, who phoned the police, and I found out why she quit her job and all of that stuff. So I used Kim's radio in his car.
Yeah.
And found out why she quit her job. And I'm like, yeah, I am a pretty terrible person, right? It's not great. And I called the police because I lost my badge and my gun, and I reported those missing. And they're just there howling on the end of the phone. It's so funny. It's such a funny experiences in this game so far. Went and spoke with that little brat next to the
Kuno.
Dead body. Yeah, bloody Kuno. And I tried getting the guy down from the tree. I failed every dice roll when it comes to that bloody body so far. And I went and got some ammonia. I went and spoke to the person. And I've even tried finding a bag to get bottles so I can go buy some more ammonia from the shop. Made it worse. Threw up even more.
Yep.
Didn't help whatsoever. I was like, this was a pointless exercise.
That happened to me too.
So I guess I've just got to wait till this thing's finished researching in my brain, and then I can equip that and try the dice roll for a third time, and hopefully this time I can get the body down off the tree.
Yeah, basically.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's what'll happen. That is basically like you fucked every single thing up, and you haven't done this one other. There's like two other things you can try to do to get it down. And if none of those work, then it's like, okay, you can get this buff that'll give you a slight burst in constitution so that you don't puke when you try to pull it down.
Oh, okay, that's what it is, because we're waiting for the wind to move at the moment or something, and then we're going to go back later.
Yep.
But that's where I'm at the moment. I'm trying to get the body down. I'm trying to remember where I live. So I'm like doing the visualization of street names and things like that at the moment. And I'm trying to find my badge and my gun. Went and got the shoe though, so I got the shoe.
At least you got that going.
We're right there. His morale went straight up when I got the shoe. He was like, "This is the best thing about me. These crocodile shoes."
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, they're pretty good." I didn't look in the mirror. I didn't want to see what I looked like.
It's probably for the best.
Did you look in the mirror?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I was like, no, there's no way I'm looking in the mirror. I don't want to see, because I'm going to be a mess. If I can't remember anything, I don't want to know what I look like.
Oh, dude, I have pushed every emotional button in that game. I was like, let me go to the darkest, saddest places that this game will take me.
You finished it?
Yeah.
How long does it take to get through? Because I kind of want to play this multiple times before I get a real thought as to what I think about the game. I want to play it through as if like it's me playing,
I
and then I want to play through as just like the goofiest decisions I could make.
I don't think you need to do that to make formulate an opinion on the game. Because it's like 40 hours or 50 hours. It's long.
Okay, definitely won't be doing that then. But this is just one of those games I'm going to chip away at every single day in bed at the end of the day. Just do like 30 minutes to an hour and just slowly get through it. And hopefully I do get through it because I'm enjoying what I've played so far. I love the dice roll mechanics. It's so fun.
You should definitely finish it. I think it's... Ooh, excuse me. I think it's a really special game, and I think it was definitely one of my games of the year. I think it's one of my favorite games of the genre. I think it's got a lot to offer, and like I think solving the mysteries that it presents is genuinely enjoyable. I found the resolution to be pretty satisfying.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, there's a lot of those little side quests you can go do, which is fun. I quite like that.
I did like everyone. I did like every fucking thing. Yeah, you should. They're all good. They're worth doing.
It seems like that's going to be the case. And the writing's so good. You can tell, I think the English translation, because I think it's a French game, right?
I'll look that up. I don't know that they're from France. I feel like they're maybe from the Netherlands.
Okay. I think that the English side, at least all the voice acting, I don't know if it was the same in yours, they're all British people, which I actually really appreciate. It's kind of refreshing to have a British voice cast. I kind of feel like that's a rarity in video games.
Yeah. That was definitely the case for mine as well. I'm pretty sure there's only one. Like,
oh, it's just English. There's no other languages. Okay,
I don't think so.
Interesting.
I don't think so. I'm trying.
I'm glad I waited for the final cut. The voice acting is so good.
It's so good.
So good.
I feel like I really made the right choice waiting for the full release, because I really was like upset that I hadn't played it before now. But
yeah, because it was at the Game Awards last year as a contender for Game of the Year.
And it won.
Before
it won a bunch of
1.0 release.
Yeah,
it did. Yeah.
They're from the UK actually.
Oh, well, that makes a lot of sense then, because that's why it says like distributed by Disco Elysium UK or something.
Yeah. They have an office in London and another in Brighton. So
okay.
There you go. So yeah, you should definitely
feels like a British game. You know, like the way the kids speak and stuff.
Yeah.
And like some of the language they use and things definitely feels like a British game, which I like. It's set in France. I'm sure it's set in France.
Not really though. Like yes,
it's like
but
a
no.
fake France.
Yeah, like all the
I
countries
know. Like I
fake.
learned stuff from the woman in the wheelchair, and she was telling me stuff like, "Yeah, there's no real police around here," and I'm like, "What the fuck am I then? Like, what's the deal?"
You gotta keep.
And like, why haven't I got a uniform? Like, what is going on?
Revachol.
And no one believes that I've lost my memory. She just didn't believe me at all. And then I acted like a total twat, and she was just like, "Yeah, I believe you." She was like shocked that I'd lost my memory. She's like, "You drank so much that you can remember a thing?" I'm like, "Yeah, pretty much, yeah."
It's tough. But yeah, I'm excited to hear you talk more about it. I hope you stick with it.
I think I will. I just remembered I did almost had the same issue you did on your first playthrough. I went and got the tie without turning the fan off.
Oh yeah?
And but I had 2 bars of health, not 1, because I don't know, I guess based on my makeup of my person.
You were more rounded than I was. I only had 1 point in Constitution, or whatever it is. So like any physical check could kill me.
Yeah, so I've got 2 in health and 3 in morale, and it hurt him straight away. It was like too straining on him to stand up or something. I was like, "Oh great, okay, I'm gonna have to start the game again immediately." But I had 2 health bars, so that was lucky.
That's funny. Yeah, I had him be as physically weak as possible and maxed my emotional intelligence, and I think my regular intelligence had like 1 or 2 points.
You played one where it's all physical because there's the buttons for the fists at the bottom, and I really want to know how they work. I
Yeah.
haven't got a chance
No,
to
I
like press
haven't.
them yet.
Haven't done it yet. Maybe that's one for me to stream. I've got that PC copy from Zaid, so maybe
Yeah, do that and let them help make choices and stuff. I think that'd be really cool.
I'll just make like a dumb brute, just like the exact opposite of the character I was
Absolute
before,
meathead.
and just be a fucking dick to everybody.
Oh, but I can't be horrible to Kim. I feel so bad for him. He puts up with so much shit from you. It's
I know.
unbelievable. I mean, he deals his fair share though when he was telling me to get people out to inspect the garbage can from the the X-ray vision department or something he was talking about.
Yeah.
And I almost fell for it. I almost went with that. That's not real. I was like, no way. There's no way that's right. I'm not falling for that shit.
He's such a great character. I really, really love him. He's a really, really good. I think he's like a prime example of how to do a companion right. But anyway, let's jump into the question block. We'll have more conversation about Disco Elysium in the weeks to come, I imagine. This first question comes from Steve's dad, who wrote in, and one of our Patreon supporters, who wrote in and said, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, Nintendo Switch. If you could only own one, which one? That's a tough question.
It's a really tough question. And we got a bunch of responses from the community as well. And I had a thought about this. My gut reaction was easy, Xbox Series X. It's got Game Pass. I can play those games all the time. I can play backwards compatible all the way back to the original Xbox. So I've got a bunch of those as well. But then I remembered PC is not on the list. So I could still have one of those and I could build like a great gaming PC and I could play all of those PC games. PlayStation's bringing over a bunch of games to PC as well, so I could play those there. So I think I'd pick the Nintendo Switch because then I could still play Zelda and Mario and Pikmin and all of those great Nintendo exclusive games and Metroid. And I wouldn't have to sacrifice anything because I still have a PC that I could just plug into my TV and use in big picture mode, and then it's just like having a console.
I feel like that's cheating. You putting in this whole PC angle.
Well, yeah, it's definitely cheating. And
fine.
If Dad wants to follow up and say that that's cheating, then I would pick the Xbox Series X.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because I think my gut reaction is to say the same. If we're going with this bullshit, I'm gonna cheat and use a computer to play other games that won't run on Switch, then fine, I guess. Then I would probably pick the Switch because it's versatile in that it's a handheld device as well, and that there are a lot of exclusive games that I think of from the last generation as being some of my favorites. And I think that would be the reason it would maybe edge out the PlayStation 5 is just that, like, I think it's a little bit more like if I've only got one console, that's one that has a lot of versatility. Provided I have a PC as well, right? Because if we're not going to cheat and we're going to be like real and have to like draw lines in the sand here and say like this is the only device you're going to have to game on, then I think I'd say PlayStation 5. Because
really?
Yeah. Because shout out to Game Pass. I love Game Pass. Game Pass is the best deal in gaming. We say this shit all the time. But if I need one device and that's going to be like my AAA gaming station, it's got to be PlayStation because their first party software generally appeals to me more. And I would get my Spider-Mans, my Horizons, my God of Wars, like their Last of Us, all those types of games, plus be able to play all of the big AAA, third-party releases. And generally, at least up till now, historically, the better version is on PlayStation because it gets more support and it usually gets some kind of exclusive content. And, at least in the PS4 era, they ran better too. So,
it feels like that's maybe not the case now, like with 120 frames per second modes and things like that coming exclusively to Xbox. We saw that with the remaster of Mass Effect, right? It
Yep,
had
absolutely.
better performance and better modes on Series
And
X.
I played it on Series X because of that, you know? So yeah, like don't get me wrong, it's not to say that there isn't a compelling argument for the Xbox, but at the end of the day, I have to go based on the software that I want to play, you know? And if I'm trying to pick one console that's going to give me the widest breadth of the types of games that I like the most, it's probably going to be PlayStation, because most of the best indies still come to PlayStation, you know, maybe later, but they come. And we have the Sony first-party exclusives and the AAA stuff. So I feel like the stuff I would miss the most in that scenario would be first-party software from Microsoft and Nintendo, which are things that obviously we got to give up one of them, right? So...
But if you're doing the PC thing, you're going with the Switch?
Yeah.
Because you're playing those games over there anyway?
Yeah, well, not even because I think I'll be able to play the PlayStation games over on PC, because I don't really, you know, I've said before, I don't see that being a normal thing. I don't think that, like, you know, I think maybe more and more we'll see last gen's PlayStation games come to PC, and that'd be cool. I'd get to play them eventually, I guess. But I think it would just be more that if I have the PC and that can be my, you know, indies and you know, AAA games, you know, machine for being at home, the Switch is gonna have not only the exclusive Nintendo software that I love so much, but also has that usability for being a portable device and being the thing that I take to parties and when I travel. And, you know, like the Switch is so much more versatile than the PlayStation or the Xbox, even if it's lacking, you know, certain genres and franchises and stuff when it comes to software. But if I have the PC to fill that gap, that's okay, you know? Then it would just be I'm missing the first-party PlayStation stuff, and that's it. Because the Xbox stuff would come to PC anyway.
Yeah, it comes day and date to PC and on Game Pass, so you're not missing out anything there.
No.
I think that there's compelling arguments for both. I definitely would miss not being able to play the first party Sony stuff, but my assumption is it's going to come to PC at some point anyway. Whether that's not, you know, within 2 years of the game's launch, at some point all of those games I think are going to come to PC. They're just leaving money on the table at that point. Everyone that's had a PlayStation played the games. For the people that wanted them played the games. Why not just sell them to another market on PC at that point?
Because I don't agree with that narrative. Totally. Like, I think that that's like something that people look at as like conventional wisdom of like, oh, well, the PC players aren't going to buy, but like they do. If they want to play.
Well, you think that everyone that hasn't played Uncharted 4 already doesn't want, like, I genuinely think everyone that wanted to play that game has played that game.
Yeah,
and
but
like that had a PS4 and now is coming to PC.
But that's not what you said.
Play it there?
You said within 2 years. That game came out like 6 years ago.
No, I said maybe it won't come out within 2 years, but at some point.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, because that's my thing is like if you're saying that like all of the biggest PS4 titles will come to PC, yeah, probably. I think that's true.
Yeah, I think they're all going to come, and I think we're probably going to see like Horizon 2 is going to come. Why would you not bring Horizon 2 when it's using the same engine as Horizon 1? It's using the same engine as Death Stranding.
Because they want you to buy a PlayStation 5. I don't think it'll come out for years.
Right now they do, but I think 2025, I think we could be playing that game on PC. I mean, yeah, that's a long way away.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's like, oh shit, okay, great.
But eventually, I'm gonna play it, right? If I'm not worried about in this scenario, if I'm not worried about playing the hottest game immediately, if it's just I'll get to experience that game at some point, and yes, I'll be way behind the times and the whole, you know, discussion about it right then and there. At least I get to experience it at some point.
Yeah.
Whereas if I bin off the Switch, the only other way I'll be able to play it, and we'll get to it later in the show, is emulation, and that doesn't sit right with me.
Right. So there you go. Great question. I had to think about this like all day. So we did have a couple of responses from the community that I wanted to read here. This one comes from Ray. He said, I'd take the PS5 and then I'd sell it on eBay for way more than it's worth. Then I'd buy a Switch and a bunch of snacks. I don't think that was the spirit of the question, Ray, but I appreciate the creativity.
It's a very good point. You get a lot of snacks with the price of those PS5s on eBay right now.
That's true. That is true. Griffin X wrote it. It said, Switch. Grew up with Nintendo, and for me, there's nothing else like Nintendo games. I think a lot of people feel that way. Zaid, one of our Patreon producers, wrote in and said, this is tough. As someone who now enjoys games with better performance, I usually say PlayStation 5 because it melds the performance with great exclusive games, but I can't imagine not having Zelda, Mario, and the rest of Nintendo's IP in my life, so I would have to go Nintendo Switch here. Yeah, I think that's a compelling argument, you know? Especially right now, right? Like, I think a couple years ago, it would have been a lot easier to be like, I'll bin off.
Oh, the Wii U, yes.
Yeah, love Nintendo, but with the Switch, it's like, all right, you know, they're not missing lately. Sobi wrote in and said, Xbox Series X. On one hand, you have the security of having a console for new games for the next 6 years or so, and from what you told us about your dad, I think he'd really enjoy looking into games that get added to Game Pass. I like that he answered this on behalf of your father. Like, if your dad was only going to pick one.
I should say, like, maybe if Sophie doesn't know, my dad has an Xbox and a PS5. He does not have a Switch. And I don't know if he'll ever get a Switch until they do just a non-handheld version. Because he just sees it as like, I'm never going to play in handheld. This is a waste of money for me.
Wait, just put it in the dock.
Yep. I don't know. I really think he would enjoy a lot of games, like
Steve,
especially Mario Galaxy.
Steve, I'm telling you, you got to just buy. You mean Odyssey?
Yeah, Odyssey, not Galaxy.
There we
Odyssey.
Go. Galaxy's
I think he did like Galaxy on the Wii.
No, but I'm telling you, you just got to buy an OLED Switch, Steve. And you pass it down the line. You know?
Yeah.
Share the
wealth.
wealth.
Have this one with the drifting Joy-Cons that drive me wild all day long.
Why would he need Joy-Cons if he's not going to play it in handheld?
That is true. You could just buy a Pro controller.
Yeah. That's perfect. That's literally perfect. Don't even give him the Joy-Cons.
There must be a ton of them going. Yeah. Well, one of them needs tossing in the bin, I think.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into our talking point for this week. So let's just address the elephant in the room, right? Kotaku. Drawing a lot of ire this week with articles about emulation. So there was obviously a little game called Metroid Dread came out recently. You might have heard of it. Indie developer, Nintendo. So this game comes out, and it was, I think, a day later or 2 days later, right?
It came out on the Friday. Kotaku posted their article on the Sunday.
Great. Okay, so within 2 days of release, we had an article about how Metroid Dread was already running great on emulators, on Switch emulators on PC, which obviously drew a lot of flack because Metroid as a franchise has, historically struggled to sell, and it is, been so long since we got the last proper 2D Metroid that was actually a new entry and not a remake, that, a lot of people had a pretty, serious reaction to that, right? That felt like a...
Well, and like you're skipping over the fact that they edited this article after the fact. I think it's still up, but it's an edited version. The original one had the tone of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Nintendo lawyers look away now. Here's how you go about pirating Metroid Dread. And it was like, that's really kind of not cool from a major video game publication 2 days after a game has launched.
I mean, I would argue that's not cool and that's what I was going to say. I would argue that's not cool for anyone, right? Because it's like, again, like...
Yeah.
Piracy is not okay, right? Like, we'll talk a lot about emulation and how that plays into things, but like to be, pushing people to, here's how you can steal this game that just came out it's not a good look, and people are understandably upset about it, I think, especially in the context of what we said about Metroid, right? Where, like, Metroid is a franchise that has been a critical darling forever, but has never quite achieved the level of success that, your Marios and your Zeldas and, the other kind of more marquee Nintendo titles have. So,
and clearly this game is doing a lot better than any other Metroid game ever
Absolutely.
has.
Which
Like,
is
we've
great
seen
news.
those stats. It's fantastic. But I saw a lot of arguments from people saying, well, I wasn't going to buy Metroid anyway, so this isn't really hurting anyone. But just because you as a person wasn't going to, the fact that anyone can pirate this game, run it on an emulator, run it on a homebrewed Switch, it's going to hurt sales. It has to, because that ability is there for people who would have bought the game if they couldn't pirate it. So I don't think that argument stands up. And I also kind of want to just address the whole attitude of people in the replies and the comments. Friend of the show, Richard, who was on a couple of weeks ago on Nintendo Noise, had slurs and swear words and like profanity thrown his way for daring to say, like, argue the case against this article and replying to a Kotaku post. It wasn't like he went and attacked the author or the editor directly. It was replying to the brand account, and yet fans of, I guess, readers of the site just piled on. And it was ridiculous, so much so he had to make his account private just to get away from all of that negativity. It was awful.
Yeah, and I think that is a good place to start this conversation, I guess, about emulation and piracy and its role in gaming, and this is a broader topic because, I think that there's a lot of justification when this comes up. A lot of people try to like jump through hoops to make excuses for why it's okay. And I think that there is the very, very, very rare user who actually, uses pirated copies in the way that some people suggest, right? This idea that like, oh, well, I just download the game so I can try it and then I go and buy it, right? And like, if you're actually doing that and you're turning this pirated copy on for 30 minutes or whatever, or an hour, and you're like, oh, this is good, I'm gonna go buy it, like, okay, fair play. If that's actually what you're doing, then I don't necessarily, that doesn't give you a free pass. You're still breaking the law, but I if that's your prerogative, I think that's fine. But the argument that people make, the one that you just brought up, Steve, of like, well, I was never going to buy it anyway, so it doesn't hurt anybody if I pirate it. That's bullshit. Because if you had the interest in the game enough to go and figure out how to download a Switch emulator, find a ROM of this game, and then play on it, you were interested in the game. You were interested in this piece of software, right? But you are justifying to yourself, well, I wasn't going to pay for it, so it's okay that I steal it and have the experience for free anyway. No, that's bullshit. That is a lost sale, right? Like, if you're that interested in it to do that and get it and play through the game, you clearly would have paid for it, right? If there were no other way for you to access it. And if your argument is, well, I just wouldn't have played it, then, I mean, okay, but so what? Like, how does it help them that you got to have this experience for free? Like, it's you're moralizing something that there isn't really a moral argument for, right? Like, at the end of the day, you're still pirating. You're still stealing something. And if you're cool with that, fine. But at least be honest with yourself about that that's what you're doing. Not, oh, well, it's fine because I'm not hurting anybody. It's like, well, no, you are. If you really wanted to play this game, go buy a Switch and pick it up and support the developers. And support the franchise so that there'll be another one.
Yeah, because otherwise it'll be left to stagnate for another 15 years, right? And even if you're not hurting multi-billion-dollar corporation Nintendo, you're hurting somewhere down the chain. You're hurting a studio that closes because they don't have any work to do anymore because Nintendo's no longer making this kind of game. Or you're hurting fans who aren't going to get the next entry in a franchise that they love.
And if you like the game, you're one of those fans, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you're perpetuating.
Yeah, like, I consider myself a Metroid fan now, and I made this point on Nintendo Noise that I wouldn't have bought this game if I wouldn't have pre-ordered this game if it hadn't been for the pricing error that I got it for, right? But having seen the reviews and having heard from friends how much they love this game, I think I would have bought it anyway. But I kind of do wish there was still the rental system that existed when I was a kid. It was, we go and we try out a game, and if we like it, I'll get into my dad's comment. We didn't always buy it, but sometimes we did. And that's just gone. The closest you've got to it is Steam's refund system, where you buy the game and you can get a refund if you've only played the game for 2 hours. And you get a good feel for, do I like this game? Does this game run well? Has it got good performance on my PC? That kind of thing. But that doesn't necessarily work for small, short experiences. If Metroid's only a 7-hour game, that's a big chunk of the game you're getting to play for nothing.
Right. But, when that was a mainstream way to get games, that was something that was, part of the equation, right? And I'm sure that game companies were not happy about that at the time.
No, Nintendo tried to sue Blockbuster, right?
Yeah. So, it is what it is there, right? That'd be a whole other conversation. It's the same reason that, I used to make the argument before they were, a struggling company. I said GameStop was a cancer on the video game industry. You want to complain about, those, pack-in DLC cards that you would have and season passes and DLC and all those things. Those all originate from GameStop. Right? If GameStop wasn't there cannibalizing the market for years and years and years, we might not have seen some of those things become commonplace. But it was a huge problem.
And that's, Asobi made that point when I tweeted it out, which was, they'll just find a way to get money out of you, whether it's microtransactions or something else. They will. Even if it's just a rental and you bought it for the weekend, there will be a way, and everyone's just going to lose then. Yep. And I do kind of agree with that. I could see those cards. It's it used to always be with EA games. It was the online play pass that you couldn't play online unless you had the scratch code.
Yep.
And it was such bullshit. It made the game worthless if you did want to resell it. And I get that used game markets it does harm the developer's bottom line, but I think that should be the choice to sell your game on if you didn't like it. I had that same situation with Bayonetta on the Switch. I bought Bayonetta 2. It came with a scratch code for Bayonetta 1. I started with the first game because that's logically where you want to start. And I hated the game, so I traded it in. But you obviously don't get as much because the card's been scratched off.
Yeah, and fair play, but I also, I get that argument too, because when GameStop was at its peak, right? When it was the most popular way to buy video games, people would buy games, beat them, bring them right back, and then GameStop would sell them for $10 cheaper, $5 cheaper, used, and that's a huge impact. And I remember when that was the primary way I bought video games, I would always be like, give me a new copy. And they'd always be like, oh, we have it used. No, I don't want it used. I want them to get the money, not you. They would actively push you to buy the $5 cheaper used copy because they make 100% of that money back. It's bullshit. It's total bullshit. So, that's the thing, right? I have made no bones about my position on corporations and companies. They're not your friend. You don't owe them anything, yada, yada, yada. But, you have to put your money where your mouth is. If you like a developer's games or a publisher's games and you want to keep getting those games, you got to pay for them, right? That's it, right? It's market reality. If you don't show up for the things that you like, they will stop getting made. That's how it works.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I just, I know though that this comes from both of us having disposable income to buy
absolutely
video games, and a lot of people don't. And being able to buy a used game, $4 or $5 or $10 cheaper, that is the decision between buying a game and playing it or not for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I absolutely have empathy for that. I totally recognize my privilege as somebody who is a little older and has expendable income, right? When I was a teenager, I needed GameStop to get new games, to trade in old shit and get new stuff. That was something I had to do if I wanted to be able to buy games, or to buy used games when they were old or whatever, or trade games with my friends, We've all been there, right? But I think there are a lot of folks who adopt that mentality and then have an entitlement to feel like they have an entitlement to do that, and then don't ever cross to the other side of the fence when they have money. And that's what rubs me the wrong way. Because I know adults who have expendable income who pirate games because they can.
Okay, so did you pirate games when you were a kid then? Or a teenager? Because I definitely did, and I don't do it anymore. I guess you could consider the games on my arcade machine pirated, because I obviously don't own a real Pac-Man arcade machine. So that is pirated.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're going to call that piracy, then absolutely, but I mean, even aside from that, yes, I have pirated games before, right? Like when I was younger, like PC games specifically. Because
yeah, I would do PC games, or I had a homebrewed PSP, and I would download like ISOs and put them on a memory stick and play those.
So yeah, so like I definitely have done that before when I was younger and didn't have expendable income. Emulators, I don't look at as being analogous. I think that if you're emulating old software that's not available anywhere else, like for you to legitimately buy, I don't really think I look at that as being kind of a victimless crime, because you're not choosing not to buy something to steal it, right? You're trying to play something that you don't have access to otherwise, right? And I would argue it's the same thing as the GameStop thing, where why is it better for me to buy a vintage Super Nintendo and a copy of Super Mario World, as an example?
Which is their official stance. It's on the Nintendo website. If you want to play old games that don't exist on the eShop or something, check out places like eBay or Craigslist for used old consoles.
Yeah, and I think that argument is kind of stupid. Like, I get why Nintendo feels that way. They're not going to tell you to go pirate their old games, but the expectation that people are going to do that, especially for like rare games, I couldn't buy a vintage copy of like Earthbound or something like that, right? For an affordable amount.
Oh, it's hundreds, right?
Yeah. Or right, like, and it was available on the Super Nintendo Classic, but like that was a limited edition thing, right? So like those are things where like I can see the argument for that, right? Like if I can't get access to X, Y, or Z random old game and I want to try it, or I want to, I don't know, make a piece of journalism about it, or any of those kinds of things, right? Like, how else are you supposed to access those games? I think that is what it is, right? Like that's the market not meeting a need, and fans and preservationists circumventing that, and like, are you still breaking the law? Sure. But I would argue that you're not hurting somebody by doing that. Whereas like if there's an example of, like what's was it Arc Razor? Is that game that just got remade?
Yes, but it's a terrible version, and you shouldn't play on Switch, apparently, according to Digital Foundry.
Well, on Switch, maybe. I've heard it's good on other platforms. But either way, right? Like something like that, where somebody, like a team, put the time in to like do a loving remaster of it, and you have these other options. Like,
yeah, well, think about like the Sega Ages collection, for example. That's another good example.
Yeah, like those are things where I think you should then go and support those efforts, right? Because if you're somebody who feels like, I like retro games and I want them to be available and I want to be able to buy them and play them on modern hardware, then yeah, you should go and support that with your dollar, right? Like that's the exact same argument I was making, right? Where if you want to see something, you got to support it. But if you want to play this old obscure game that was never released overseas or hasn't been released again since it came out or whatever, right? Like,
or I think Olaf's point is a really good one, which is like about localization.
Sure.
Right.
So yeah, here we can read this. This one comes from Olaf from the Discord, who wrote in and said, Okay, here comes the thing. I may have used my old Switch for homebrew purposes. The main reason was the localization project from a group of fans that has been going around for a while now with Yokai Watch 4. Level 7 never bothered bringing it over to the West, so the group of fans decided to make a mod for the game that could only work with a homebrew Switch. So I decided to indeed take advantage of it, because there was literally zero way to play that game in English otherwise. So, I mean, that's a great example. Right? Like, that's a great example of you know, like, I would say you didn't do anything wrong there. You know, like, you're just trying to enjoy a game that you can't play otherwise, you know? And, like, you can make the argument that maybe you should import a copy, right? So that you're still paying for the game. But, you know, I feel like that's a way... It's like the Mother 3 translation, right? Like, how long have people wanted that? Yeah. And Nintendo won't give it to us. There's a fan one. And I'm not going to blame anybody for doing that, right? Like, they refuse to answer a demand. So people are going to go do what they're going to do.
Yeah, what do you think about, like, people emulating classic Pokemon games, for example? Because obviously you can play those on, like, a 3DS, but you couldn't play those on the Switch currently. Obviously, there are the rumors that Game Boy games are coming to Switch. But that's actually the only way I ever played Pokemon games as a kid, was emulating them. I never had a copy of them.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, again, it's the same argument, right? Where it's like, yeah, you could have gotten them on the 3DS, right? But, like, or I guess you still could. Or you could buy a vintage copy, but, like, you know, I don't know. Like, I own the game multiple times. I bought it on 3DS. I don't want to play it on 3DS. And if I'm going to put it on my computer to, like, stream it or something like that, like, again, I own multiple copies of the game. You know, like, I don't feel bad about that, right? Like, I think you come to a point where it's like, there are clear examples of stuff where it's like, pirating Metroid Dread 2 days after it comes out is actively a shitty thing to do, and you're hurting somebody. Yeah. Me downloading a ROM of Pokemon Blue so I can do a randomizer run on my laptop, is that hurting anybody? I bought the game legitimately on 3DS. It doesn't let me do a randomizer run on that. Or maybe it could, but I don't know how to hack a 3DS. I know how to put it on an emulator, right? So, you know, like, am I hurting anybody by doing that? I don't think so, right? Like, I've bought that game 4 times. Steve froze at a very pivotal moment here. He's just staring at me with the most judgmental face. And normally I would edit around this, but I think this is pretty funny. Okay, so we're back. Sorry about that. My internet dropped. I was finishing my point, Steve, about how I felt that example was a good example of a victimless crime because I had bought the game multiple times. And then you froze, and you were just like this. Just staring at me. So I was like, oh wow, what a perfect time for you to freeze. Such a judgmental face. And then I realized it was me that had dropped. So here we are. We're back. Sorry about that.
Do you know what I gotta say? It's a refreshing change for my internet not to be the problem.
So anyway, I think I think we can use this question from Trendy Brendy to pull us back in here. So Brendy wrote in and said, let's say I have a physical version of a game and a flash drive containing a ROM of the same game, and I loan one of them at random out to a friend who wants to try the game and has no preference of platform. Has the publisher lost money in either scenario? Yes, in both. If your friend completes the game that you loan them, yes, they lost money in that example.
Yeah, but I just think that's par for the course with any kind of art. You know, if I loan you a book, they don't get money from that.
Exactly.
If I loan you a DVD, they don't get money from that. But I guess there is a difference between the flash drive and the actual game, because I guess the flash drive, they're going to take the ROM and you've technically made a copy then, right? You're copying it from the flash drive onto your computer. Your friend could then give you the flash drive back, and they still have a copy of that ROM that they can continue to play without being in possession. And you can also still play your copy that you own. So you can both play it at the same time. Whereas if you just loaned it, you both can't play the game at the same time.
I think legally,
which I guess is the difference.
I think legally speaking, you're allowed to make one copy, right? Like, you're allowed to make a digital copy of a piece of digital art that you purchase. Like say for example, I have Into the Spider-Verse on Blu-ray, right? That comes with a digital copy for a digital download, I think, or I can make one legally and put it on my phone so I could watch it while I go on a plane, right? Or put it on my laptop, right? I would be allowed to do that. It's when someone else makes a copy of that copy or I distribute that copy to somebody else that I've broken the law.
So it's like ripping a CD versus making MP3s and distributing them on Napster.
Right. Or distributing
Copies of the
ripped
CD.
copies of the CD. Right. Yeah. But in to answer Brendy's question, yeah, like the publisher loses money in either scenario, but in one of them you're making illegal copies, and in one you bought a license to that software when you bought a copy of it, right? So this is your copy, and if you want to give it to somebody else, that's your prerogative as a consumer. You're allowed to do that. But the fact that you've made a copy so that you can use it and they can also use it, that's where you're circumventing that in a way that is illegal.
Yeah. I got to say, though, that's the main reason I like physical media is you have the choice. You can trade it in or give it to friends, or me and Macaulay both have like separate Switches. So if they want to play a game, I've got a whole back catalog of basically every good Switch game that they could tap into. When I bought them a Switch last year, it was great. Whereas if it was digital, it would have been, well, you've kind of got to start the library from scratch because there's no way to share games across accounts with the Switch.
Yep. It is what it is, right? That's the trade-off you get. So here we got some points from and I should say Trendy Brendy, another one of our Patreon supporters. Thank you, Trendy Brendy. And this one comes from That Doc Guy, one of our Patreon producers, who wrote in and said, "Oh man, I have some thoughts on piracy. Q1, given Nintendo's aggressive stance on protecting their IP, yet refusing to allow end users to legally acquire/play their older titles without spending hundreds of dollars that Nintendo doesn't see anyway, is it justifiable to run emulators/ROMs of older Nintendo titles?" Yeah, I think so. I think in that exact example, absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think if they're readily available, say for example they're on the Nintendo Switch Online service, then there's less of an argument to be made for it being okay. In terms of them like not being aggressive in protecting their IP, one, they have to, right? We've made that point multiple times. They have to, otherwise they lose it. But two, the websites that distribute those ROMs, they're making money off of Nintendo shit, right? They've got ads plastered all over them. They've got their like pay to download faster bullshit.
Yep.
All of that stuff is going straight into someone's pocket who did absolutely no work to earn it. And I can see why they would want to shut that down.
Absolutely. Yeah, and not only are they well within their right to, it's something they have to do, right? Like to protect their IP. Question 2. Why do you think Nintendo doesn't have a method of playing older titles without either a paywall via the NSO libraries or the mini consoles? Well, I think the first part of that, there would be no reason for them to ever do that, right? Like to playing older titles without a paywall, like you have to pay for the software, right? If the question is you're asking why don't they allow you to just buy it, like a la carte, like with the virtual console, I don't think there is a good answer to that in terms of why they don't do it, except for the fact that they've realized they can make more money doing it in other ways. Because I would imagine that the virtual console, right, like when you put, Super Mario World or whatever on the virtual console, how many people buy that, right away or over time?
You buy it for like, what was it, like $5? You buy that for $5. Yeah. They've got one purchase, and then, or you could give them $5 a month.
Right.
And God knows how much the expansion pack's going to cost because they haven't announced that yet. Could be like $10 a month that they're going to be getting off you. So I can see why. I think it's a shitty practice, and I would really love to see it just be, oh, I really, really, really love Super Mario World, and I just want that one game from the SNES, and I don't care about playing online games, and I don't care about any of the other stuff that the Switch Online offers. That's all I want, and I wish you could just say, I'd like to buy that. but you get it for free if you're a Switch Online subscriber. Why not kind of make that value proposition of you can get all of these for $5 a month, or they cost $5 per game?
Yep. Yeah, and I agree with that. I think it should be that way. I've always felt that way. I don't think there's a good reason aside from the fact that they feel they can make more money leveraging them in different ways, which is unfortunate. Like the mini consoles, right? That's a great way to leverage those to make more money than you would just selling them a la carte, because it's a limited time collectible item, rather than, when you can always access something, when there isn't that perceived scarcity, people don't flock to it in the same way. It's proven,
Yeah. I think the most egregious example for me, though, is the Mario stuff. The 3D All-Stars, the way that just disappeared and got delisted from the eShop as well, the fact that you just can't get it at all. And the Mario 35 is gone forever. No one's going to be able to play that game again. It's really, really sad that they just wiped it from history.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then Doc said, and my personal hot take, until Nintendo has a reliable and not prohibitively expensive way to play their older consoles and games or listen to the soundtracks thereof, I cannot justify them being so aggressive with protecting their IP the way they do via YouTube takedowns or ROM site shutdowns. All that said, if they offered an official way to play a majority of their older titles, I would absolutely do that. But in the meantime, I'm sticking with my flash cart of the entire N64 library. So I think to pick that apart a little bit, I don't think it's that black and white. I get where you're coming from for sure, Doc, but I think the point that Steve made about like ROM sites and stuff like that is a salient one. A lot of those sites are not, angels, right? Like we've talked before about how I think the emulation community is hugely important to video game preservation, because fans and historians are interested in preserving these things in a way that IP holders are clearly not. And that's hugely important. I emulate games. I have emulated games. I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with that. But the idea of that you can't justify them being aggressive and protecting their IP, I don't agree with that. Because I think when it comes to ROM site shutdowns and stuff like that, those are people illegally profiting off of their IP. I think when you're talking about the YouTube stuff, that I am more in line with you, but I don't feel like they're super aggressive about that. The entire Animal Crossing soundtrack has been available on YouTube for 13 years. I listen to the same playlist every time I want to listen to that soundtrack. They
used to be way more aggressive with it, right? Yeah. The Nintendo Creators Program, they used to be so aggressive.
Yeah,
with that,
absolutely. But they're not now.
They've kind of come to the conclusion that this is just the way the world is now, and they need to get on board with it. I think this was the first time we saw them distribute a game to Twitch streamers early, before anyone else got it. They were playing the beginning of Metroid Dread live on Twitch before the game launched. And it was that was the first time this ever happened with a Nintendo game. So it kind of feels like they're progressing a little bit. They progress seemingly slower than every other games company out there, but they get there eventually. And I can see why you want to stick with the entire N64 library. There's no way every N64 game is coming to the Switch Online service just the way every SNES game didn't come to the Switch Online service, and there's some fantastic games not there, and probably never will be there because of licensing restrictions. And I presume you own a good chunk of those games anyway, or have owned them at some point. You probably gave Nintendo your money for those games at some point, and you're just playing the games that you loved as a kid on actual N64 hardware, which I think is a kind of a really cool way to play.
Yeah, and especially I think the argument about you being expected to keep and use old hardware becomes increasingly hard to swallow, with the way that technology is evolving. Because I do own an N64 and every game that I'd ever want to play, but I don't have a television that I can hook it up to, and adapters don't really work. Trying to play an N64 game on a giant 4K TV is not a good experience,
You can do it. You might need something like a Frame Meister, which costs $500, but you can do it.
And I'm not doing that.
If anyone is interested in that, check out the YouTube channel My Life in Gaming, because they are obsessed with getting the best picture out of these consoles. Did you know there's a a mod for an N64 where you can add an HDMI port to it. It's soldered onto the board.
Fuck, that's cool.
Yeah.
Maybe I should get one. So the one thing I do just want to add before we get off of this last point from Doc is that I think that where I get frustrated about how aggressive they are is like how they treat fan games, and we have a whole episode about that. If you want to go listen to our conversation about the Metroid game that they shut down before the release of Dread, those are the areas where I feel like they have overstepped in protecting their IP. But when you're talking about, you know, people illegally distributing their software, you know, that they got to do what they got to do, whether we like it or not. I think them not providing an alternative to curb that desire rather than being aggressive and you know, in that way of like going after the folks who are you know, illegally distributing it. You know, I wish that it wasn't one or the other, right? Like that's the thing is, I think the best way to discourage piracy, look at Netflix, right? The old early days of Netflix, you know? The best way to discourage
Spotify.
Yeah, the best way to discourage piracy is to provide an easy, convenient way to access the stuff that people want. And I do think that is on Nintendo. And until that happens, this is going to be a consistent problem, you know, in some form or another. Anyway, thank you to everybody who wrote in on this topic. I know that it's one that people are very passionate about, so I appreciate that everybody who wrote in did so in a way that was respectful. And I think we were able to have a good dialogue here, so thanks again. We appreciate you. If you want to write in for next week's main talking point or for our question block segment, please hit us up in those ways I mentioned earlier. You can get us on Twitter at FlipScreen Games. You can come join our Discord where we have a fun, inclusive community where you can come talk about games and keep the conversation rolling. We talk about every episode after it comes out and kind of continue the debate. You can see all these folks who wrote in are all members of the Discord. A bunch of these comments came from that debate and that discussion over there. So if you want to come be a part of it, please do. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to, especially if you've been a listener and you've never written in before. Yeah, like I said, I've issued the challenge. Write in. We want to hear from you. And then last but not least, if you want to go show your support, the best way to do that is, of course, to head over to patreon.com/FlipScreenGames, where at the $2 level, you can get access to One More Thing, our exclusive podcast where we keep the talks going about stuff outside the world of video games. And we got a bunch of other cool, you know, perks that you can get access to, right? We've got the Twitch archives. You can become a Patreon producer, all kinds of good stuff. So go head over there if you're so inclined. And if not, you know, there's a bunch of other ways you can support the show. Go to flipscreen.games, check out all our links, give us some follows, give the video a like, go give us a rating on, you know, Apple Podcasts or wherever you get the show. Just let people know that we're out here and that you enjoy the show that we're doing. That is the best way that you can support us. So, I've been Pete, he's been Steve, we've been FlipScreen Games. We'll see you next week.